Beautiful Northwoods, Wisconsin lakes. But we have over 3,000 of them. How do you pick out what lake is the right one for you? Here are some characteristics of lakes. Size is important, depth is important, the type of lake, drainage or seepage, drained or spring. Bottom is important. Is it sandy? Is it mucky? Is it gravel or is it rock? Finally, there's a lesser known lake characteristic called the trophic level. And there's three basics: oligotrophic, mesotrophic, or eutrophic. Lake size in acres and depth are pretty self-explanatory, but I will say lake size is important because lakes under 50 acres, generally speaking, are non-motorized lakes. So if boating is important for you, that may be one critical factor. First style lake we'll look at is the drainage lake. They're super common. Those are your lake chains, your flowages. You can identify an inlet and an outlet in these sorts of lakes. They're generally speaking, they're shallower. Doesn't mean that the water quality is poor. It's just that the oxygen levels are kept up by the inlets and the outlets. Another type of lake that's common up here is a seepage lake. That's where we have spring water table water coming in from the bottom of the lake, and it's identified because it has an outlet on it. Another lake style is the drained lake. They're not very common here in the Northwoods. That's where water from precipitation and runoff fill up the lake, and there's no inlet or outlet. They're characterized by having pretty widely fluctuating water levels. The last type is the spring fed. That's what everybody wants. They're clear water. Water comes in from the water table, usually stays in the lake. The water is usually pretty darn clear. Lake bottom is going to be important for you if you're a swimmer. We have sandy bottoms, we have muck bottoms, we have gravel bottoms, we have rock bottoms. Most lakes are a combination of the above. There's very few that are all one or another. So you have to pick that out and spots. Generally speaking, the east shores will have a tendency to have a little bit less muck because the muck has a tendency, I call it the weed fairy, to actually be shoved under and sent back out by wave action to deeper water. Protected bays sometimes are a little bit tougher because muck can float in there and has a hard time getting out because of, say, eddy currents and these things. And what muck really is decomposing leaves, pine needles, flotsam, jetsam. It's not bad for you. It's healthy for the lake, too, by the way. Then there are the trophic levels, like three basic types. There's oligotrophic, which has low nutrients, clear water, low algal biomass. Those are the super clear lakes, and they're not always great fishing. Then there's mesotrophic, which is moderate nutrients, moderately clear water, moderate algal biomass, and that really is many lakes in the Northwoods. And finally, eutrophic, the most common. High nutrients, less clear water, high algal biomass. This really is the majority of the lakes in the Northwoods. So does a high trophic level mean that the lake is bad, quote unquote? No, it usually means that the fishing is pretty good because the fish often feed off the algal biomass. So, but you can find low trophic good fishing. You can find low trophic great swimming. That's pretty common. And then you can also find high trophic, eutrophic, that has really great water, really great fishing, really good swimming. So you can find it all. To summarize, we've talked a little bit about lakes and what the characteristics of the lakes are. Talked a little bit about size. Remember, under 50 acres is going to be non-motorized. We didn't really talk much about depth. Obviously, the deeper the water, the more clear most of the time it is. Not always. There's exceptions to that. But deeper water can sometimes mean colder lakes too. You can run into that up here, whereas you can be swimming in basically Lake Superior, where it never warms up. And we do have lakes like that up here where if you get to too deep a lake, sometimes only the shallow waters will get warm, but nothing else will. So be careful about that, but deep lakes are wonderful things. And most of the lakes up here are not all that deep, to be perfectly honest. We talked about the type of lake, drainage lake, or a seepage lake, or a drained lake, or a spring lake. We don't have many drained lakes here. I call them prairie pots. We talked about the bottom, the sand or muck, or if it's gravel or it's rock. The sand, obviously, people like that a lot, the hard sand. Most lakes here are actually a mixture. Most of them are, this percentage, say 50% sand, 10% muck, 20% gravel, 20% rock, or 10% rock. It's a combination of things. The fishermen oftentimes, particularly like the bass fishermen, they like some rock and some gravel out there, and like walleye have a tendency to go to the gravel beds in the middle of the summer as well. too. And then trophic levels. We talked about the oligotrophic levels. Those are the uber clear lakes. Obviously, most people love the idea of a perfectly clear lake out there. Gin clear, you'll hear the term used. Those are wonderful things too. Sometimes the fishing stinks on them. And sometimes they're very, very cold water lakes too. So just be advised that not all oligotrophic lakes are highly desirable for what you want. They're usually on what we call younger lakes is what we call them. And then there's mesotrophic lakes. Those are pretty darn clear lakes that they have a little bit more algal biomass in them. They're usually very good quality lakes too. And then there's the eutrophic lakes, which a lot of the lakes up here, the lake chains, generally speaking, I'll say this Manitou's chain is like mesotrophic for the most part, but Minocqua chain, Eagle River chain, Three Lakes chain are eutrophic style lakes, meaning that they have higher weed levels, higher algal biomass levels. Doesn't mean necessarily that they bloom, because that's what everybody wants. Does it bloom? There's a few lakes up here that do bloom, but most of the time our weather at night is a little bit chilly for blooms. But we can talk about that in another video. I hope this is helpful. This is Jim Malady from Shore West Realtors here today I'm in Eagle River.